If your tech person is saying, don't worry about it, we can fix it in the mix, well, my advice is that you probably should be worrying about it. And it's probably a good idea at that point to say, whoa, no, it's okay. We've only done 27 takes. We can do another one. Well, let's get this right. We'll start from the beginning. Do it again. Because if you don't have a good foundation, it's hard to build on top of that. And with today's modern tools, you have a lot of editing control. And so it's a whole lot easier to fix things in the mix today than it was decades back. But nevertheless, it's a whole lot better. And it usually ends up with a lot better product if you start with something good and then sweeten it, rather than starting with something broken and trying to fix it. This applies to doing a recording session where you're going to go in afterwards and fix those mess ups. Now, I know there are some bands like Metallica was known for spending an inordinate amount of time on the mix side of things, scrutinizing every single drum beat and cutting and slicing and quantizing and making sure that's just perfect. And if that's your jam, great, go for it. But that's extremely difficult, extremely tedious to get a great result. And I think it's hard to get a unified vibe if you're doing a lot of slicing and dicing and modifying in the mix. And likewise, if I'm working a live show and I'm back at the board going, that guitar, it sounds horrible. Well, a lot of guys will just reach up for the equalizer and start cranking the EQ around, and I don't think that's a very good idea. I think it's a much better idea to go up on stage and say, does this guitar sound as horrible on stage as it does out in the audience? And if it does, fix the instrument. Make the instrument sound decent to begin with. And if the guitar sounds okay on stage, but it's not coming through very well, maybe it's the placement of that instrument amplifier on stage is not working for you. Maybe the placement of your microphone isn't the best place for it to be. Maybe you need a different microphone with a little different characteristics for that particular instrument to represent it well. And so I'd address those things and get a decent result before trying to do any sweetening with effects or audio adjustments. And I think by following that approach, you're going to get a much better result with a lot less effort. I'd like to share a story with you, one of these don't do what I did stories that really cemented this philosophy into my mind. And this took place decades ago when I was just a kid. I was a teenager at the time, and I hardly had any experience at all, and I made some unwise choices. So I was just a teenager. I was playing around with audio gear, trying to figure out how to build a home hi-fi system that was awesome. And I enjoyed recording stuff, and I think one of my parents' friends were over, and they were saying, "Hey, Barry, you like playing around with audio stuff, right? You want to help a friend of mine do a recording?" Sounds like my kind of thing. And he goes, "Yeah, he's he's an actor and stage guy, and he older guy. He's written a memoir of his journey through life, his life and times of, and he wants to make an audio book out of it. So he's looking for somebody to run the recorder as he reads his book. How's that sound?" Sounds great. Sounds like a good time. And so he gets me together with this guy, and I am floored. This guy's a big deal. He's a really big deal. He's famous. You'd know his name if I mentioned it, but I'm going to try to protect the innocent here. And so I was kind of shell-shocked. It's like, oh my goodness, I get to work with this superstar? Holy... Okay, cool, So I set up my open reel tape deck and a nice microphone, and very nice guy. And so he sits down, he starts reading his book. Now, I have done my share of audio book reading. It's not easy. And even if you wrote the book yourself, reading it aloud as an audiobook format, it's not easy. And this guy was, of course, a seasoned professional at this sort of thing, so he was pretty good, but it's not easy. And so sure enough, after a page or three of reading, he messes up a word. No big deal. I was like, okay, well, we can stop tape. Let me back up, and you can reread that paragraph or that sentence. And when I mess up a word, when I'm reading an audiobook, I always back up to at least the beginning of the sentence and pitch it again, because there's almost no way that I can just simply repeat a word that I messed up and have the cadence and the flow and the rhythm actually fit, so you don't hear the edit come in. And so I mentioned this to him, and he's like, oh, no, I don't have time for that. Listen, if I mess up a word, I'm just going to take a quick breather. I'll say that word again, and we'll just continue on, and you can fix it in the mix. I had a little reservation about this. I thought, okay, but who am I to argue with this guy? He's a superstar. He's worked with the best of the best of the best. And he's obviously worked with professionals who are much more experienced than I am. So if this is the way they do things, I mean, that's the way it's done, I guess. So, okay, sure, that sounds fine. And so we recorded about 6 hours or more, 8 hours of audio book. And each time he would make a little mistake, he would just pause for half a second and then continue on. And I had the task of taking all of this material and editing out those little flubs and creating one unified, smooth production out of it. That was not easy. Now, of course, back in those days, we didn't have Pro Tools. With today's equipment, we can go in with digital editors and just slice and dice right down to the 100th of a second, do a smooth cut. And if we make a mistake, there's always undo, and we can try it again. But that wasn't my world at the time. I was recording this on analog tape, open reel tape. And the edits were done with a splice block and a razor. And there is no undo button in that system. You make the cut, it had better be right. And if it isn't right, that's bad news. And so that was super tedious. And I think I spent the better part of an entire week trying to edit that stuff by hand with a razor, chopping and slicing. And the results were okay. They weren't great. I wasn't really proud of the results of that, which is unfortunate, because if there was a project I wanted to be proud of the results of, it would be the one with this guy. And I certainly didn't want to disappoint him or his people. And so, it was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay. And it was a heck of a lot of work. And it would have been a whole lot easier if I would have said, no, sir, we have to do it this way. We have to at least repitch the whole sentence or the whole paragraph. That would have given me enough room to wiggle in there and do those splice edits and have a chance of reasonable success. And so the moral of this story is real simple, which is get the foundations right and then tweak based on that to make it great. Don't settle for second best and try to slap some paint on it afterwards and make it okay, because you're probably not going to end up with the results that are as good as what you could have done if you had just gotten the production right from the get-go. So if somebody's telling you, we can fix this in the mix, well, if it isn't a monumental effort, I would say, no, let's get it right. And that way the mix will be awesome, not just good. I hope that lesson that I went through helps you a little bit. And if you enjoy the content, I hope that you come back and watch more videos, choose to subscribe to the channel, give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. And I wish you the best in your journey and in your productions.